Hello you guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new, I'm Ashley and today I am sharing the birth story of our son. This is a video that has been so anticipated, highly anticipated by some of you all, and also just for me to be able to upload because I have loved watching these for years and years and years. So I'm so happy to be able to share his birth story online with you all. I hope it provides a little bit of peace, comfort, relief, makes you feel less alone, helps you look forward to birth a little bit. Whatever it may be, I hope it does provide you something positive and you get something positive from our birth story. He is also in his swing just right over here, so you'll probably hear cooing as he was asleep. He is now not asleep, and I'm sure I will have to get him out at some point during this video. I will definitely get him out at the end to introduce you to our son if he stays in the swing up until that point. But let's go ahead and get into it. He is 6 weeks as of yesterday. I cannot believe how fast time has flown by. So like I said, I'm so excited to formally introduce him on my YouTube channel and get this video out there. So grab yourself a snack or beverage as we're just gonna have a little chatty birth story vlog. So this story starts on the morning of Saturday, June 21st, 2025. It starts at 4 a.m. I hope you've watched my third trimester recap because that will explain a little bit more, go into depth of the days leading up. But to summarize a little bit, I had my 38-week OB visit on Friday the 20th. Well, that did not last long. I had an OB appointment the day before on Friday, June 20th. And at that point, I was still zero dilation. I was at 0 centimeters dilated. I was very effaced. I had been effaced for a couple weeks, pretty like much in the 75-80% effacement, but I was not dilated. So anyways, go watch that and you'll get all the details of that visit. But Saturday morning, June 21st at 4 a.m., I woke up with excruciating back pain. And I will go ahead and forewarn you, I actually, my entire labor process, I never felt a single contraction in my sides, in my stomach, nowhere except my low back, which made sense for me because I had a low back injury in high school. I woke up with horrible back pain. And I got up, I got in the shower, I got in the bath. I was just trying to do anything to relieve the back pain. I actually fell asleep, hunched over the shower wall, or the tub wall in the shower with the shower head water pouring on my back. That felt so good. But anyways, that started at 4 a.m. I got out around 6:30 a.m. That's when my husband was waking up and I looked at him, I said, I think I might be in early labor, but I don't know because I had never been in labor before. So I didn't know if those were contractions or if my body was maybe just getting ready for labor. I sent him on to work and just continued to try and get some rest, lay down. I was in and out of sleep. Again, the back pain was keeping me pretty awake, but I was dozing in and out of sleep. And at 8:30, I got up, I went to the bathroom and noticed I was spotting. So at that point, I did call my OB. I was calling my friends and calling my mom and just trying to sense out what was normal. But when I talked to my OB, he said the spotting did not really alarm him because he said it really might just be cervical change, you may be starting to dilate at this point, but it did not bother him. It didn't make him worried. He said, as long as you're still feeling the baby move, we're all good. At this time, however, I realized I had not felt the baby move for the entire 4.5 hours I had been up. Okay, I have him in his little snuggle me lounger, so hopefully he'll stay in there right now. So I told my OB that I have not felt him move, and so my OB immediately says, well, I think you then should get to the hospital. Just get monitored. I think you're gonna be really anxious if not. So just go ahead and go in and get monitored. So I call Luke. He turns around. He was headed into work. He was almost into Nashville, so luckily he didn't get too far into Nashville before turning around and coming home. Luckily, also, I did have my bag pretty packed. His bag had recently just been packed, and all of the things we were taking to the hospital were all at the door. We did grab all the last minute things and pack those. I was doing that as he was headed home. The entire time we were loading stuff into the car also, I was like, this feels so ridiculous. I feel like I've kept you from going to your show. I feel like we're packing all this for no reason. I'm just gonna go get monitored. They're gonna send me home. I was telling everyone they're just gonna send me home. This feels so dumb, but I guess we'll go in just to be safe rather than sorry. So I was totally of the mindset that I was coming back home. But my friends and my doula both were telling me, could you time these back pains? Could you time them and see how far apart they are, if they're timeable, if they're showing a pattern? And I was kind of I mean, I guess so, but again, I don't think it's a contraction, so I don't think it's timable. But once we got in the car and headed to the hospital, we had only been gone for like 3 or 4 minutes. I did get out the contraction timer that I had downloaded literally the night before on my phone and started timing these back pains that I was convinced were not contractions. Literally 3 times on the way to the hospital, the app alarmed me to head to the hospital. It would be like interrupting the timer and it would say, you need to head to the hospital, you need to go to the hospital. And the last one happened as we pulled in to the OB ER. So I was like, okay, well, I'm here. I'm at the hospital, thank goodness. Because once we had gotten there, my contractions were an average of 2.5 minutes to 2 minutes and 45 seconds apart. That was the average. They had picked up rampantly since that morning, and yeah, they were definitely contractions. So we arrived at 10 a.m. to the hospital for monitoring, and they got me checked into triage, and pretty shortly after they had me change into a hospital gown, do a urine sample, and I was seen by a nurse. Once I talked to her and she got me all hooked up and stuff, she was like, let's do a cervical check so we can admit you for monitoring, see what's going on. So she does a cervical check. Now, mind you, the day before I was about 80% effaced and 0 dilated. She does this cervical check. She's like, oh, you're about 80%, 75, 80% effaced, and it seems like you're at a 1. And so I'm like, great, I'm officially dilated, but I'm just a 1. And as she finishes the cervical check, I feel a warm rush of water. And my eyes bug out and her eyes bug out as we are literally looking at each other, because she says, oh, I think your water just broke. And I'm like, yeah, I think it did. So at that point, we are staying because my water has broken. So I'm now on a clock. I think the legalness is 48 hours. Your baby needs to have been born 48 hours after your water has broken. But at my hospital, they're way more on the 24-hour side, just for safe and to make sure, you don't really get into that whole infection conversation. So since my water had broken, we were definitely at that point on a clock. It is about 10:30 a.m. at that point, and we know that we're not going home. So at that point, they start up my paperwork to get me fully admitted. They start getting me a room ready, and I pretty much am just laying there in the bed in triage, being monitored. I think they started getting fluids in me because, let's go back to his movement. His heart rate was a little worrisome. So they do a monitor on me and they do a monitor on the baby. His monitor was showing that his heart rate was not great. They really want the fetal heart rate to be doing big up and down jaggedness on the reader, and his were just these little squiggles, and they wanted more movement. So that was kind of worrying them about him, and so they wanted to get fluids in me. They thought maybe it was a lack of hydration. They didn't really know, but they wanted to get fluids in me so that we could hopefully see an improvement in his heart rate and his movement. It was also at this time that I was told I would not be able to be admitted to the birth center. So if you watched my prep with me for the hospital, or pack with me for the hospital, in that video I did briefly go over my birth plan, which was to have an unmedicated birth in the birthing center at my hospital. It's very low monitoring in the birth center, but the big reason I wanted to do it this whole time was for the hydrotherapy. There are great tubs and showers in the birth center rooms, and I really wanted to labor in the tub, potentially deliver in the tub, but that was my plan the whole time. However, to be admitted into the birth center, you have to be dilated to a 6, and at this point I was a 1, so that pretty much kicked me out of the birth center alone. But the fact that he needed to be under pretty strict monitoring because of the lack of movement that we'd had that day and all that, that also kind of ruled us out of the birth center, because at the birth center there's not continual monitoring, it's intermittent monitoring. So we were just at that point not candidates for the birth center. They did try to get me one of the regular L&D rooms that has a tub, but they were all taken. Mine did have a shower, but I did not have a tub. So at this point I was feeling a little discouraged because I was really wanting the tub in order to hopefully have the unmedicated birth I wanted. But at least I knew I did have a shower, and I was just trying to keep it positive and light. But they were like, we will accommodate as much as we can to the unmedicated birth you want, but unfortunately you cannot be in the birthing center and you will need continual monitoring. So at this point we get into our L&D room, which was very spacious. It was great. It was about 11 a.m. So my nurse's name was Cindy. We met her and got into our room. Luke brought all of our stuff in. I know he made like 2 trips to the car at this point because when he parked and we went to triage, he didn't bring anything in. So he got our stuff in. At this point, I'm just like FaceTiming my friends and talking to them about my morning and keeping me distracted. I did not enjoy sitting or laying down because of the way I was feeling my contractions in my back. So standing felt the best of all the options. So they had this inflatable kind of like UC shaped item. It was tall, and I put that on the bed, and I would like just lean over it, and that felt really good. I would bounce on the birthing ball, and I did take me a good long shower in this next process of labor. Basically though, I never sat down and never laid down. I was really trying to let gravity help move things along as I was only at a 1. I was trying to really get things moving. I will say that the shower was by far the best part of a medicated labor because water is definitely nature's epidural. It just takes so much of the pressure off. And I remember when I hopped out of the shower, I was in there for about an hour. I remember when I got out of the shower, the first contraction I had once I got out of the shower felt like the worst contraction I'd had in that past hour because the water just truly felt so good. I will also say right before I got in the shower, which was about 4 o'clock when I got in the shower, we had a nurse change and her name was Emma and she was phenomenal. I want to say the nurses' names because I want to remember them, and all of our L&D nurses that I saw were just like so incredible. But I did love Emma. We connected really well. Her energy and mine were very the same in like what I needed. But she's the one that got me into the shower around 4 o'clock and then helped me once I got out of the shower around 5 o'clock, which is when I had my next cervical check. So at this point, like I said, I'm back in the bed. I am about to have my next cervical check, and I don't remember what my effacement was at this point, but I was at a 2 dilation wise. That was, I don't want to say heartbreaking, but I was definitely very upset and devastated at the fact that after all of that on my feet, I only dilated 1 more centimeter. But at this point it was 5 p.m. and being at a 2 with your water broken was not good because I knew my doctor would want to start some Pitocin pretty soon. I knew that that talk was coming based on those numbers just to get things moving. At that point, my nurse Emma and I talked, Luke and I talked, and we pretty much decided that the best route at that point was to get the epidural and to get Pitocin. I knew that being on Pitocin and already having painful contractions, they would get way more painful, and not being able to be in water, I just was not wanting to go through the extent of dilation and birth on Pitocin without having an epidural. So once we had decided that I was going to move forward with the epidural and Pitocin and change up the birth plan entirely, Emma was phenomenal in the fact of recognizing that I had been doing this since 4 a.m. and we'd had such a busy morning getting to the hospital and everything that I had really had nothing to eat. The only things I'd eaten were saltine crackers and dried fruit that I brought with me from home as part of my birth snacks. And so she was like, you're gonna need a little bit of real food that has good like nutrients and stuff just for your stamina. So she was like, let me go ahead and get you a dinner ordered. I will say, if I was not in labor and in the state I was in at the time of not having had food all day, it is not a meal I would have ever picked because it was like steamed carrots and steamed, I can't remember, some other vegetable with rice, I think is what it was. But I did have some broth and Jello, and both of those things were great. I loved the broth, I loved the juice, I loved the Jello. Anything like clear liquid is pretty much the diet that you will be on if you get an epidural. So she was like, let me go ahead and get you a meal ordered up here so you can eat, and then I will get the epidural team ready to go. So like as soon as you finish eating, we'll get you the epidural and then we'll start the Pitocin. So that was fantastic. About the time that I got my food, there was another nurse change. And so then I got Nurse Katie, and she's the one that was with me until I delivered him. She was also so sweet, and I think we were like right about the same age, so that was really fun because we had a lot in common and we just talked about all things like college and SEC sports. She was like a sports nerd like I was, so that was fantastic. She was great as well. Again, all of our L&D nurses at our hospital were amazing. So my food came super, super quick, which was great. Luke got a baseball game that was playing, put on the TV in our room, and I ate my food. Luke got a DoorDash delivered. I think he said he had Subway, if I'm remembering correctly at this point, and we ate dinner. And then it was time for my epidural. The epidural team also came really quickly. I don't think they were super busy the night we delivered, which was fantastic. Because I want to say once like Katie came and got my tray from food and let the epidural team know I was ready, they were there within about 5, maybe 10 minutes. So they came, debriefed me, and man, can I tell you that epidural team, so good. We did nurse gifts, if you remember, and I remember telling my friends and my mom, like, the nurses were fantastic and I'm so happy I did nurse gifts for them, but really who needs the gifts are the anesthesia team, because the difference that they make is pretty insane, I will say. So I had my epidural done. Like I said, they were fantastic. They were super quick, really good and efficient. And yeah, the guy that placed mine, he was so good. So I had my epidural done at 8 o'clock and the Pitocin was started around 8:30 to 9 o'clock. So this means that I did labor unmedicated for 16 hours and I only got to a 2, which was really sad. I will say that I'd always dreamt of the unmedicated birth, being able to say I did it unmedicated. I, for some reason, really wanted to like prove to myself I could do that and experience that. But I will say I did give it my best effort because it was 16 hours unmedicated. So at that point, we just, like I said, we knew it was time to change plans. Around 9 o'clock, I fell asleep because it went into effect so quick. And it literally took away the contraction, pain, pressure, all of it. I did not even know when I was having a contraction, like so instantly. And I actually fell asleep around 9 o'clock. And I took myself about a 2.5-hour nap. I woke up around 11:30. They were in and out of the room every 15 minutes, bumping up the Pitocin drip like amount. It could bump up by 2 points every time, every 15 minutes. And they were in there literally every 15 minutes, bumping it up by 2 decimals. I don't know, whatever the like ratio amount, the way they do it, whatever. Because when I woke up at 11:30, I looked up at my Pitocin drip monitor and it was at 22. So they had come in there 11 times because it starts at 2. So I guess they had come in there 11 times to bump it up. And so yeah, that had happened. I woke up at 11:30, like I said, and Luke had not fallen asleep. I think he was kind of like just relaxing on the little couch, but he had not fallen asleep. Those 2.5 hours were so nice though to have gotten a little nap. So definitely recommend, if you get the epidural, rest, take a nap, because you'll need it. I don't know what we really did at that point. I cannot remember for the life of me. I don't think I was really on my phone, but I don't remember us watching something on TV. I think it was just kind of like being in a little bit of a daze. We're officially in Sunday, June 22nd. At 1 a.m., I saw my nurse and my doctor. I had not actually seen my doctor since noon, 1 o'clock. He had had a lot of C-sections going on that night. For some reason, there were tons of C-sections happening because my nurse and my doctor were getting called into C-sections pretty often throughout the night. Also, sidebar, because I forgot to mention, but totally a God thing, blessing, was that my OB was the one on call for the practice at our hospital that weekend. So my OB that I saw through my whole pregnancy, that has been my gynecologist since like the beginning of 2021. He was actually one who delivered him and was able to be my doctor, which was so nice because I'm familiar with him, his vibe and his style and all of that, which was so nice to have during delivery. So he comes in and sees me and checks me. And at this point, I cannot remember what effacement I was. I wasn't really like concerned about that for some reason, but I was at a 4, which was really great. I'm like, at least we're making progress, because the last time I was checked, I was at a 2. So at this point I'm a 4, but pretty much our nurses, our doctor, everyone's pretty much betting that at this point I'm gonna deliver around like lunchtime, like late morning, lunchtime the next day on, well, it was that day at that point, but later on that day. So he leaves and Luke at that point makes his couch bed up with the sheets and the blankets and the pillows and all that to kind of try and get some rest. I message my mom, I message our doula, and I'm like, hey, I'm at a 4. So that's where we're at. Also, we had the doula. She was there to help with, mainly if I was unmedicated, to help with like techniques and positions and stuff that Luke could do with counter pressure. But she's also a birth photographer, and that was kind of the main reason we hired her, was to get some pictures of the birth. So she let me know she wasn't going to sleep that night because I was at a 4 and she didn't want to miss anything, and she was editing, but she was like, just keep me updated as we go. So some time goes on, and then a random nurse comes into my room at 2:45, just a little over an hour and a half later, and she's like, been watching my stats and his stats on the monitors outside, because again, minors, Katie was in a C-section, and she's like, I'm just gonna check you based on like what I'm seeing. And she checks me, and she just looks at me and she's like, you're ready. And I just kind of look at her with this crazy blank stare, and I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, you're 100% effaced and at a 10. And Luke and I were shocked because I was expecting to hear like maybe a 6. I was not expecting a 10, considering just a little over an hour and a half before that, I was at a 4. So we jumped from 4 to 10 so fast. Also, when she checked me, she told me I was at about a 2 plus 2 on his like station, because there's 0 station, and I think you go from like -3 to +3. He was already +2. So it was like, let's get rolling. We are ready to go. So I text our photographer doula, and she's like, what? I am hopping in the car. I'm racing there. I was so panicked that she was going to miss the birth because of all these new like stats and numbers, and she was about 45 minutes away. Luckily, my nurse Katie was back pretty soon after this point, and she was like, we can wait to start pushing as long as we can, because I really want you to be able to get her here. So that was super nice. But it was about 3:05 to 3:15 once I started doing some pushing. And you pretty much do like push practice and push with your nurse for most of the time. And then once you're just like a few pushes away, that's when they go get the doctor and they come in to actually do the like catching, delivering part. I did not realize how long this would take with him already being at a 2, but we were in for a little bit of a ride. So I start pushing, the doula gets the mirror, and I'm like watching everything in the mirror, which was super helpful. And he slowly starts making his descent, but for the last 45 minutes of the pushing, he was stuck in the same position. We started looking at a shoulder dystocia situation because he was stuck, and he has very broad shoulders, and his shoulder was stuck on, I guess, my pelvic bone. So I actually saw my OB for a lot longer than normal because of him being stuck. So because he was stuck, my OB at some point recommended to me, it was probably around 5 a.m. that he brings up to me, he's like, I think we're gonna need some assisted tools with delivery. And both the vacuum and forceps really freaked me out. I tell everyone that we need new names for these objects because they just sound so scary. But let me tell you, it was the best decision that was needed in the time. We ended up going with the forceps. That's what my OB recommended. And I was a nervous wreck about doing it. It freaked me out. It scared me to no end, but it ended up going great. It was very smooth. And honestly, I wish I had known and decided sooner to use them, because once we officially used the forceps, he was out on 2 contractions. It was very quick once we used those, but I was very, very nervous about it. But I will say, if you have an epidural, you're not going to feel any of the usage of a vacuum, a forceps, like anything. So take that as you will, as a little bit of comforting measure. I also had a partial episiotomy done. I had a 2nd degree cut/tear. I definitely was going to tear in a lot of areas if I had not been cut. And I will say, I have now learned that you would much rather be cut than naturally tear, because the cuts are able to be done in locations that heal better and that are like more preferred, as well as the sutures can be done more cleanly because the cuts were like clean cut instead of jagged tears. I know we're getting really vulnerable here. So anyways, those things were done. This is all why I know it was divine intervention and God's plan that I did receive that epidural, because I cannot imagine if I had not received the epidural, I mean, none of this would have happened. We would have been probably in a C-section, and I don't know, we would have just been in a completely different situation as far as like medication wise, timing wise, how delivery was done, all of that. So thank goodness, praise the Lord, that I did have that epidural, considering that I had a partial episiotomy and forceps use for delivery. So about 5:15, I would say, is when we officially started doing the forceps. And as soon as that decision was made, so quickly the NICU team came in. We went from having about 5 people in our room to about 15 people in our room, because if you use any like medical intervention as far as forceps, vacuum, anything like that, a NICU team has to be on standby. It's just protocol. I don't know like all the details, but they were all in the little back area by the warmer and the bed and all that, ready to check him out in case it was needed. And they just had one member of the NICU team, kind of like the head person, once he was out, came up to check him out on my chest, and it was just her, which was nice because it wasn't like overwhelming or anything. But she checked him out and she was like, he is great, he looks amazing, so healthy. They all started just cheering and yelling happy birthday, and it was so funny, so cute. And then they all just file out, which was such an interesting thing. But he was officially born at 5:19 a.m. on June 22nd, 2025. And my doctor put him on my chest. He started screaming and crying super quick, which is literally the best sound. That's what you want. My husband and I were both crying and bawling, and it was like such a whirlwind of adrenaline and emotions. I remember so much of it, and then I also feel like some of it is a blur, and I really just know because of the photos that we have, which is also a reason why I love that we have the photos that we do, just to help remember it. But it was quite a whirlwind. But I'm just here to tell you that if your plan does not go according to plan, it's okay. I know it can be devastating. It can be really aggravating because you've prepped and planned for the birth you wanted. I know because I went to pelvic floor therapy. I went and saw a prenatal chiropractor. I did the mile circuit. I did all these things with the ball. I did all these things to help prepare my body to get him in the right position and to be able to do unmedicated birthing. But sometimes it's just not what's going to happen. It's not what's in the cards. I hate to say it. I think the biggest thing is making sure that you stay healthy and safe, and making sure your baby gets here healthy and safe. Those are the ultimate goals. And I learned a lesson so quickly in motherhood in this process, and that is motherhood is all about making a plan and then having to sometimes divert from the plan to do what's best for everybody. And that is being a good mom. And that is literally what I had to do. I had to change my plan. I had to make a new plan. I had to accept the fact that my plan is not what was going to be happening, but to do whatever I needed to do to get my son here safe, to stay healthy and safe myself, and for us all to essentially just stay healthy and get here safely. And I think that's kind of the most beautiful thing you can do, is adjust and adapt as needed. We were then in our room before moving to our postpartum room for about 4 more hours. I got to my postpartum room around 9:30 a.m. So him being born at 5:19, it was, like I said, about 4 hours. They did like all of his stuff, like his weight, the pediatrician checked him out, took his temp, did all of those things. And they continued to work on me in the way that I had sutures, and that took a little bit to get me finished up. They kept monitoring me for my stats because I actually had my blood pressure like dip a few times and then go up and then dip and then go up. So they were kind of waiting for that to level off, and they took me to the bathroom, and I had to go to the bathroom before I could go up, and all of those things. So there's quite a few things you're gonna do before you go to your postpartum room. But that all took about 4 hours. And then at that point, we were in our postpartum room on a different floor, and that is where we stayed until Tuesday morning, June 24th. And we were discharged that late morning, early afternoon, and that's when we came home. And that is our birth story with our son. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Crew Alexander Carver. We have had this name picked out for so long, as far as we've loved the name Crew. I think I introduced it to Luke, or approached Luke with that name when we were literally like in college before we were even engaged. And I was like, if I have a son, I really love the name Crew, and I love the alliteration Crew Carver. Alexander is Luke's middle name, so that's where that comes from. We passed that on to him, and we just think it kind of like goes with everything. So Crew Alexander Carver, this is our little man. He was 7 pounds, 7 ounces, 18 and a half inches long, Bless you. And he is waking up for his cameo. So this is our little Bubs. Can you say hi? I'm gonna flip him around now so you guys can see him, but he is the sweetest little boy. He was 6 weeks old yesterday officially, but he is literally the sweetest baby. I even hate to put these things out there because he'll change as soon as I say it, but he really is like such a wonderful baby, easygoing, very chill temperament. He loves to sleep, he loves to eat, and he's just given us like the best 6 weeks. Honestly, as a newborn, he has been so easygoing, and it has been really, really nice. But that is going to be the end of this vlog. I know it's been just a chatty long vlog as I've debriefed that whole weekend really, but that is how everything unfolded to get him here. I obviously, like I said, did not have the birth I planned to have, but I had the birth I was intended to have, and I have my sweet baby who has been the light of our life for the past 6 weeks, and that is what matters. So I'm here more to say if you did not have the birth you wanted, it is totally valid to sit in your feelings, to deal with that, and to grieve the birth you wanted, but know that as long as you got your baby here healthily and happy and everyone is doing well, that you are a fantastic mother. It is so hard. It is physically so hard. It is mentally so hard. So know that you're doing an excellent job as a mom from literally the first moment on, just for giving birth and going through that process and doing what was best for your family. So that's going to be it to wrap this up. I cannot wait to share more mothering adventures with you now that Mr. Crew is here, and I cannot wait for you guys to watch him grow up. But that is going to be it for this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.